Hey, I wanted to share with you a little bit about the expectations of some of the assignments that you'll find here in this course. And the first one I wanted to share with you about is the sermon that you're being asked to write. You've been reading The Good and Beautiful Life. And in this little book, James Bryan Smith is using the roadmap of the Sermon on the Mount to help illustrate the way of living in the way of Jesus, to help people put on the way of Jesus and teach others to live in this way too. And so what you're being asked to do is to preach a 20-minute sermon from Matthew 5 through 7. Now, obviously, you should not be preaching from the whole thing, the whole Sermon on the Mount. That's already a sermon. Instead, you're going to pick a section from that. And it doesn't really matter what section you choose, as long as you choose a section that then you'll be preaching from, and the goal is to help equip other people to live in the way of Jesus. So this sermon is going to demonstrate the exegetical work that you're doing with the text like you would in any biblical interpretation work that you've already done. So you'll be studying the text that you've chosen from Matthew 5 through 7, and you'll be developing a sermon. And the point is then to be able to communicate that in a way where you're hoping to help people both understand the text and move forward to a life more like the life of Jesus. That's the difference between maybe a exegetical paper and a sermon. It's not just about explaining the text, but it's helping people do something with that text, to be moved by that text, to be shaped and formed. In the sermon, you're going to want to draw points out, make connections to the text, but you're also going to want to be making connections to the world now, maybe make connections to your own life. Some advice that I would give for you is when I'm writing a sermon, I always like to ask the question of my text, why is this important to me? And if I can't answer why it's important to me, why it's important and has been important in the history of the church, then I probably don't have a very good sermon. And so please make sure you're asking that question and let the answer for that question, as you discover it by working in the text, shape what you do and how you write it. I'm asking you to record this sermon. I'm not asking you to preach it in front of any actual people. You're welcome to if that helps you. But the goal here is for you to just demonstrate this sermon, and I am asking you to speak it because the sermon is different than a paper, right? We write a certain way when we write, but when we speak, we use language differently. We're trying to connect with people. The sermon is its own art form. And so I'm specifically asking for you to record a video of yourself delivering the sermon because it's important that you get some experience and some practice doing these sorts of things. And as weird as it is to preach right into a camera lens, that's a lot of what ministry might be looking like more and more as we go into the future. It's certainly what ministry began to look like on the onset of the pandemic. It's a skill that will be helpful for you. I hope that as you engage with the text that you choose and you engage with the book and use Smith as a resource for your sermon, absolutely, that you'll do some of the own work that happens in your own life when we prepare a sermon. For a sermon to be effective, it first has to work on the preacher. So ask why this matters to me. Let the text that you choose from Jesus' sermon work on you, and then turn that into something that you would give to a congregation. What is it that God must say through you? And how can you let your work and your personality all come out and shape that? Can't wait to see what they look like.